into solving quadratic equations. We're going to look at solving quadratics first using factors. So we've already looked at factorizing quadratic equations. So we know that we can reduce a quadratic equation down to two factors. So our quadratic equations look like this with an x squared and an x and a number, and we know if we reduce them down to two factors, our two factors look like something like that. Okay, two brackets, that's what the two factors is for that equation from there. So that generally is what our factors look like. So we get two brackets usually. And what's important here is this idea that I've written in the red line. If I have two things A and B that multiply together and the answer is 0, then that means that one of the two things I started with must have been 0. And we can think about this kind of in simpler terms. If I have something multiplied by 4 and the answer is 0, well then the something must be 0. And similarly, if 6 multiplied by something is 0, then again the something must be 0. But if I have two things that I don't know and they give me 0, well then either one of them must be 0. The only way I can get 0 is if the things I started with, one of them is 0. So for our quadratics, if we have our quadratics like this case where we get it down to two factors and we know that it's equal to 0, well then that's going to mean that either x plus 4 is 0 or x plus 3 is 0. Because remember, we don't know what the value of x is. But if when I multiply them the answer is 0, well then there must be a certain issue or a certain value of x that makes one of those be 0. And that's the only way my whole equation could be equal to 0. So similarly, if I have 2x plus 3 and it's multiplied by 3x and it's all equal to 0, well then again, either 3x is 0 or my 2x plus 3 equals 0. And that really is the core of how we solve our quadratic equations. So everything up to that point is done as normal. We factorize our quadratic equations as normal, we get our two factors, and then to solve, we're going to be putting them equal to 0 then, and solving them as little equations. Okay, but just making sure that we're happy with, I suppose, that general idea. So say I have something like this, equal to 0, I take each bracket individually and I put them equal to 0. Because for two things to multiply to give me 0, one of them has to be 0 in the first place. So we try out both of them. We see what value of x would make each bracket 0. And then those are going to be my two answers. We're going to have two solutions here for all of these questions. So our steps here are to rearrange if necessary. So we make one side equal to 0. That's always kind of a starting point for us. We're going to then factorize the equation as per normal, so just factorizing our quadratics as we normally would. We're going to let each factor equal 0, and I've put a note there again, just a factor looks like that, okay, usually a bracket, and then we're going to solve the equation that we're left with. Okay, noting as well that a quadratic will have two solutions, and we call them the roots of the quadratic. So to solve this quadratic, we have to first factorize the quadratic equation. So start off by finding my guide number. My guide number here is going to be minus 14. So factors of minus 14, 1 and minus 14, 2 and minus 7, minus 1 and 14, minus 2 and 7. I need the factors that will add to give me minus 5. So it's going to be 2 and minus 7. Let's do this one out fully. So I'm splitting my middle term then, minus 2x or plus 2x minus 7x minus 14. Still all equal to 0. Here I'm doing some grouping. So x by x plus 2 minus 7x plus 2 equals 0. So I get x minus 7 and I get x plus 2. All equal to 0. Now I've gotten that far, that's as normal. But at this point, we're using our new trick here. So because each of these things multiplies to give me an answer of 0, I have to try out both of them. So I say, well, let's see if x minus 7 is equal to 0. And let's see if x plus 2 is equal to 0. So you can see here, all I'm doing is I'm taking what's in the bracket and I'm putting it equal to 0. Okay, each of them separately. Then on this side, if I want to get the x on its own, I need to plus 7 to both sides here, which gives me x is equal to 7. And similarly over here, I need to take away 2 from both sides, which is going to give me x is equal to minus 2. So my two answers, x equals minus 2, x equals 7. Okay, so important, two answers as normal, usual story, but just kind of following it down the whole way through there. And I suppose the key thing is this last step here, is this part. That really is your trick, or your new element there. Looking at another question here, this one doesn't look like a quadratic. Okay, it doesn't all squared. 25 is the same as 5 squared. I can rewrite this as 2x minus 5, 2x plus 5 equals 0. And then as before, I take these two factors. So I get 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. And then adding 5 to both sides here to give me 2x is equal to 5. And then we need to divide by 2. So these last little steps, that's all going to be linear equations. So that might be one to look back over if you're unsure of what's happening there. And same thing here, 2x plus 5 equals 0. Very similar steps to the last one. Taking out 5 from both sides, and I can divide by 2. My 2 answers 5 over 2 and minus 5 over 2. Okay, so jump into a few of these questions here. Do all of them, right? Just want to do one or two just to get that general idea down. So looking at the first one here, we're just making use of that idea of having two brackets that multiply to give me 0, meaning that I have to take each of them equal to 0, which gives me here x equals minus 3. And trying the second, x minus 7 equals 0, gives me that x must be equal to 7. Okay, jumping down to some of these later questions here then, let's do this middle one, x squared plus x minus 90. So I need to do factors of 90, because I start by factorizing. So that's going to give me 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 3 and 30, I think 4 and, no, 5, 2, 5 and 18. Okay, making all of these negative. 6, we can use our calculator here as well to just kind of test out. 6 and 15, 7 I don't think, 8 I don't think, and then 9 and 10 of course. Okay, 9 and minus 10, and similarly we do the opposites for all of these as well. Minus 9 and 10. Okay, again, I want them to add to give me the plus 1 in the middle there, so it's going to be the minus 9 and the 10. Splitting out as before, or we can use that little trick that we had for these quadratics that had a leading coefficient of 1 either, but we'll just do it out fully this time. This is not going to work for me. Minus 9x plus 10x minus 90 equals 0. So x minus 9 plus 10, x minus 9. So I get x plus 10, x minus 9 equals 0. I'm then going to take each bracket and put it equal to 0. So x plus 10 equals 0 means that x equals minus 10, and x minus 9 equals 0 means that x equals to 9. Okay, so following the same steps there the entire way down. Let's just look at one more, so we'll go down to this last one here. So that's just going to change how I get my guide number. So my guide number here, it's 2 multiplied by 7, which is 14. So 1 and 14, 2 and 7, minus 1 and minus 14, minus 2 and minus 7. I have to get minus 15, so it's going to be minus 1 and minus 14. So 2x squared minus x minus 14x plus 7 equals 0. So here I'm just going to be taking out a factor of x, give me 2x minus 1, minus 7 gives me 2x minus 1. So I get x minus 7, I get 2x minus 1. Then same as before, I'm going to take each bracket and put it equal to 0. Okay, important that you at least get that step down. Then I'm solving them as little linear equations then. So I get x equals to 7. Same here, I'm going to add 1 to both sides to get rid of the minus 1. So I get 2x is equal to 1, and then I need to divide by 2 to get x is equal to a half. So my two solutions there as before. Just important, the whole way down here, you can see how key it is, I suppose, that you know how to factorize your quadratics first of all, as that's your first step, and then that little trick then of letting each factor equal to 0, and how that's really important as well, how we solve these quadratic equations. Just making sure that you're kind of happy with that little step, that you're able to follow through with taking each of those brackets and just writing them equal to 0, and then solving them as their own little equation.